But I'm going to specifically talk about the Unraveling of Michelle Dubois, which actually used to be the Reconsidered Archive of Michelle Dubois. There's been so much confusion about what is real, who is real, if she is I, or if I am her, or if I actually staged all this, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. People think this is fictional. People don't know if it's my mother. There's sort of all these wonderful rumors floating about. It's such a complicated project, and it comes out of my interest in the sort of fiction of any sort of totality when it comes to photography, and whether you're talking about in terms of history and in terms specifically of the archive, this sort of this amassing of many photographs and the impossibility of ever coming to any sort of conclusion or completion. I've been really strict and very rigorous about thinking about what to show and how to show it. I was really obsessed with staying away from the single image. I mean, I always am. That has to do with my entire practice. Another sort of side note is I always work in publishing. I come out of the zine scene. I come out of the early 90s DC sort of punk rock music zine world. Have been making zines since forever. Have made books of every single thing I've done. So my relationship to books and sort of the way that the work needs to be read as books is very important. Ends of rolls. I'm really interested in this, where the sort of the photograph ends and it starts entering a new negative. That's going to be a strategy in the book, along with images falling off the page. These kinds of things that want them to be massive, absolutely massive. And the sort of whole thing as well. And then this with the kind of the falling apart, the literal disintegration. Again, it's sort of the same situation but different, the same but different. This is a whole series that goes back to my wanting to keep in images from the roll and not editing out. This is part of the cluster concept. So often, particularly now with digital, we just delete everything. I was really interested in photographs that existed in the last 10 images or whatever, and including every single one of them. And I was particularly interested in the silhouettes. Again, this idea of the impossibility of trying to know her. All of this is about varying degrees of fantasy, right? But an important thing that you'll see clearly throughout the installation is a combination of loose prints, all different kinds of framing, plexi, all over the map. So this idea of completely breaking whatever rules there are about ways that things should look or should be framed or should be presented. And I wanted to sort of give a sense of collapsing all the different kinds of mediums with all the different kinds of photographs. I mean, there's hand-done C prints, there's digital prints, there's black and white fiber prints, there's Polaroids. It's kind of all over the map.
It makes the statement that somehow the project is a photo project, but you're somehow relating it to the world of art, and you're relating it to the whole history of how art takes up photography, right? Again, I would say you're doing it in a sort of complicated way, or a sort of a roundabout way, right?
The rigor of the conceptual practice was really important to me, and sort of I finally kind of let go with the Dubois project and kind of let what was actually happening start manifesting in the work, which is how the realization of the archive as being a dynamic thing and being inspired by all these different kinds of art movements that have led up to it, and having allowing for a more sort of multiplicitous and not so strict interpretation or reinterpretation, and allowing for that complete befuddlement, because it's the crisis of postmodernity, and also I think the crisis of a lot of work that's been happening recently that's been really focusing on materiality of photography. I mean, it's the end of the analog, so at some level, like, deconstructing the medium makes a lot of sense, but I was frustrated by the dryness of it, and I kind of, so it's like the way my approaches are very multifaceted and a little bit schizophrenic, but I mean, so is the actual material that I'm working with. I am appropriating, but I'm appropriating to the point that I think it's mine. Like, it's kind of a weird, like, beyond appropriation or beyond, it's a complete collapse in a certain way.
Pictures are, they're actually shocking in certain cases, right? And disappointing and abject. And abject is even too scholarly a term for what's going on, right? The sadness in it, or the abjection in it, is also related to photography, and is related in some way to the status of photography and the relationship that it has to history and to other forms, and its constant attempt to sort of mutate to fit somehow, right? I think that there's something about the whole project that's sort of allegorical about photography as art, like this chameleon play to sort of fit this way or that way, when in fact, like, in the end, you kind of wind up with a sort of beautiful solution, right? It does actually become art when it starts kind of disintegrating or something, right?
Right. I hope so.
You could have another analogy between the sort of, striptease in a way that Michelle is
that's
performing, and the striptease of the
Yeah, that's true.
medium that's sort of giving up one layer of color at a time or something.
Yeah, totally.